Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this month's Grid Talk. I'm Tom, the marketing manager here at MethoGrid, and I'm joined by Jody, the MethoGrid CPO. Today, as the title says, Jody will be taking us through Portfolio Gantt and providing an overview of the past year of product updates. For those of you that are new to Grid Talk, we run these kind of sessions monthly with the aim to share the best industry practice and knowledge and really help you with your kind of capability uplift journey within your organization. For those of you who have maybe not used Livestorm before, you can interact with us on the bottom right hand side of your screen. There should be a kind of Q&A and a kind of chat option there. I'll be talking to you throughout the event on the chat. I'll be sharing some different kind of pieces of content relevant to the discussion and things like that. And just to let you know, there will be two different Q&A sessions during this event. There'll be one after the Gantt portfolio demo and one after the kind of year update session. So for those of you that are new to MethoGrid or might not know anything about MethoGrid, MethoGrid is the AI-empowered platform that enables clients to build, deliver, assure, and enhance corporate playbooks. We help teams improve how they deliver deliver projects and services, and we do that through connecting knowledge, experience, and technology. We pride ourselves on the collaborative professional services we provide and acting as a strategic partner to our clients during capability uplift projects in a number of different sectors. One thing that we would like to just shout about before, kind of as it's the end of the year, is as 2024 kind of comes to a close, we just wanted to kind of shout about over the course of the year, we found ourselves nominated for 8 different awards across a variety of different award bodies. You can kind of see there, APM Project Management Awards, the Project Controls Expo, Lloyd's British Business Excellence Awards, some big hitters there, and we just want to thank our community for helping us get there. A really kind of solid year with that one. Anyway, without further ado, I'll pass over to Jody if you want to take over.
Thanks, Tom. Hi everyone, I'm Jody. I'm head of product and one of the co-founders here at MethoGrid. So it's going to be a webinar of 2 halves. I'm going to give us a sort of overview of the features in the new Portfolio Gantt that we released a few weeks ago. And then I'm going to do a roundup of the various feature releases we've done during 2024 and give a demo a few of those features as well. So I'll kick off. Like Tom said, there'll be a Q&A at the end of this portfolio demo, and then we'll do another Q&A at the end of the demo of the 2024 features. Have you got any questions about those? So first in, I will now take us into MethoGrid. So hopefully, and Tom will tell me if this is not the case, you can now see a grid in MethoGrid. So we've had the Gantt tool in grids for some time in MethoGrid. So when you're in one of our playbook grids, the existing Gantt tool is here, and you can now schedule that grid in here. We wanted to bring this up a level so that you can have a 360 view of all the delivery grids in your portfolio. And we've enabled that at the folder level. So you've always been able to categorize the grids in your portfolio by folders. You can create new folders, you can create subfolders in here. The Portfolio Gantt lives in the same place as it does in the grid, up here on the right. And when I toggle that on, it will load all the grids in the folder and all the subfolders below it. So what this does is it enables you to organize your delivery grids into separate folders. So in this example, I've got a clients folder, and in here I've got subfolders for some clients, and in those folders I've got some project grids. So if I go back up to clients, what will happen is when I hit the Portfolio Gantt, it will now load all the grids in all the folders below clients. So I've got project A and B, C, and D. I can see the Gantt on the right here, and what it does is the top level item in the Gantt is now the grid. So these are each 4 separate grids. You might have noticed there was a number 1 in this order. What it does is when it opens that out, it will filter out using the table any grids that are archived or are master playbooks, which are not in delivery. they're included in the Gantt in case you do ever have any scheduling or dependencies between them. They would need to be loaded in the Gantt. I can control the filters by clearing them up here, and I brought back in the master one here, which was the master active. So that is how we go open Portfolio Gantt. So if I just wanted to see client one, I would go into client one, and I can open up client one, and now I'm looking at project A and B. Same with two, loading C and D. So if I come up to the top, if I want to review my client portfolio here, again, open up the Gantt. The Gantt works in exactly the same way as it does in the individual grids. You've got the order here, the name of the item, and the grid goes down to grid, then the stage, then any elements, which might be work packages, and any stage gates, and those that have tasks would be in there. That's your basic structure. And then to the right, we have the Gantt table with all the data in. Almost all these columns are the same as the scheduling columns that you have in the grid, but the Portfolio Gantt does have some unique data columns. So I can see who's assigned to there, and the unique ones are the folder that each one is in. If I bring this up, you can see this one's in folder one, these ones are in folder two, client two. So you can then filter by these and just select which ones you want to see. Also at Portfolio, we have the grid label. So I can label my grids in order to categorize them across folders. So we have folders for organizing grids. A grid can only be in one folder, but it can have multiple labels, which can then cross folders, and you can filter on these as well. So in a large portfolio, I might have lots of different ones. I can filter down to just see the priority ones. Next unique column is grid types. We have two types of grid in here. You have the non-master and the master. The master tends to be the playbook from which you're cloning the delivery playbook. After grid type, we have grid state, and they are either active or archived. And when you open, as I explained, it's already got filters applied on these. It's filtered out any masters and any archived. You can bring them back in either individually on the filter or by clearing all filters in here. So to the right of the data table, you've then got the traditional Gantt chart here, and you can zoom in and out on this. I keep clicking this. You'll notice this is zooming it to fit the available screen that it has, but you can go right in and the times will change. All the tools that are familiar to you from the Grid Gantt are at the top here. But crucially now, I can manage all these grids across these three folders in one holistic view. So for scheduling, I can go ahead and start to schedule items in here. I can start to give them durations, dates, anything that I'd normally do in here. One change that has been brought with the Portfolio Gantt is when we create new grids or you clone grids, they will be given a start date constraint as the top item in your Gantt. So you can see here, these grids, when they were created, were given a start date. In the grid, I can change that. If I want it to start earlier or later, I can go in and edit that, and that will then constrain the items, the child items within the grid. Up from that level, we also have an account start date, which is the fallback if you don't have any constraints. So it would always need to schedule items with durations to a start date. So for items that have a constraint, it would be constrained by that. Everything in that project is constrained by these dates, and everything in that project is constrained by those. The account start date is a fallback if it doesn't have anything to go on. And you can set that in your account settings. So in here, I can schedule items, but crucially, the main part of our Portfolio Gantt, as well as the ability to view everything in your account, is I can now create cross-project dependencies. So for instance, if I wanted to expand out project A here, and I wanted to create a dependency to project B, I can do that. I can do it in a number of ways. I could say that I want the close stage here to have it to be a predecessor to the startup of B. And that has now rescheduled everything in B, because the start date, new end date, new start date, you get the idea. Those now cross-grid dependencies between those two grids. Those two grids are in the same folder. I can open up grids from here just by clicking on that. I can make these dependencies between any item in the grid. So for instance, that was a stage to stage dependencies. I could come right down into the close stage of project B, find the task I want, and I could link the task across folders to the startup phase of project C in a different client folder. And I've created that now, and that's rescheduled it. You can also set and edit these in the columns here. You can type them straight in and search there as well. So I've now created dependencies between those grids, and you would have seen them reschedule each other. If I drop out of here now and I go into those grids, so project A, as you saw, has a dependency. Project B has a dependency with project A. If I open up A and go into the Gantt here now, I will see project A is expanded because that's the project that I'm working in. If I minimize that, we'll also see B and C because they now have dependencies that affect A. So the chain is always shown wherever you view it in order for the Gantt to know what's going on in your portfolio. I can edit anything in project A. I can change my durations here, put them up and down and reschedule things in here. Any dependent grids are view only. So it's bringing those in so it knows how to schedule based on changes, but I can't edit those. So I can't edit that. But if I do want to go back up and edit at any point across the portfolio, I can simply go back to the portfolio. And up here, I can see the grid location in terms of the portfolio. So this is project A. It's in the client one folder of clients in the grid library. So if I wanted to go back to schedule across A, B, and C, I can come right back up to the clients folder, open that up, and now I can schedule across those right there. It's worth pointing out some of the changes in those grid Gantts. So before we brought the Portfolio Gantt in, the top item in a grid Gantt was the stages, because we have the ability for cross-grid dependencies now. The top item is always the grid, and you go down from there. And wherever you view a Gantt, we always show the account start date if it's relevant for scheduling in here. But in most cases, I'm sure you will have configured various constraints across here, which will control when the start and stop ends. And there we have the Portfolio Gantt. I will pause for some questions. I'd quickly just remind people before I do what these all along here, you'll see me collapsing and expanding all up here. I can clear all filters. I can move through time spans on the right. These I can drag and move around and get rid of the chart if I just want to work in the table. I can export the whole of the Gantt if I wish. When you export, it will export what it can see. So if you use the PDF export here, you can configure what you print out. So that PDF would come out showing 1, 2, and 3. But if I then expanded A and did the same thing, it would then print what it can see on the screen there. And you can also export the data table into Excel and CSV. And there I will pause, Tom, and come back for the Q. See if we've got any questions for the Q&A.
Sure. So we do have it does say question for later, but maybe I'll kind of read it out now. So from Sam, hi Jody, question for later, but is one sentence. But in one sentence, how can I sell the benefits of the whole Playbook Gantt innovation, not just the Portfolio Gantt enhancements? Reason I ask is typically I expect to encounter colleagues and peers well versed on, for example, a Microsoft project.
Okay, right, that's an interesting question. Probably worth going back into the Gantt to show some of the benefits there. If I maximize this again and come in, So let's bring that up into full screen. So one of the benefits that we have is if I go back all the way to my master grid. So again, the Gantt is fully featured. You've got everything you need in there. One of our key unique selling points is the fact that you've built your master playbook methodology. So in here, I've built out my stages of my methodology and I've created the work packages. And in here, not only do I have the tasks, so a traditional Gantt would just be showing me tasks, possibly stages, depending how you've structured it. In MethodGrid, those tasks are alongside the knowledge of how to run that project and how to carry out those tasks. So they're side by side with the knowledge. When I've built this all out, and in this master, I'm also able to carry out some scheduling. So what I've done in this particular one is very basic predecessor successor setup between stages. And then you'll see that some of the tasks, and clearly you could do this for all of the tasks. If you know, well, task one tends to take 10 days, you can schedule all of these in your master with durations. Just one in each is enough to schedule it out. If you just wanted to, not have too many durations in the schedule to start with, but you can create a master now with your estimated time spans for a fixed project. And then when I clone this master into a delivery, it will bring across all those durations and dependencies. It will have removed, if I had a load of assignments and things like that, it would take those out. But if I clone that now into a delivery, so perhaps this is going to be project E, I've now got a complete clone of that with all the information I want all cloned through. The knowledge is all there. All my tasks are still there. And then crucially in the Gantt, one of the key features of the Gantt is that it's now essentially scheduled itself based on those durations. And remember I mentioned earlier on, it sent the constraint date starting only the 12th. So what it's done is it's scheduled this now to start on the 12th. And that entire Gantt has been scheduled for me all the way through to finish on the 3rd of April. And then clearly I can then come in and configure this, change durations, do whatever I want. I can take out work packages. If I don't need this work package, I can take it out, or I can filter them out to make it an easier view. So hopefully that gives a few of the benefits, a bit of the extra bits that the likes of Microsoft projects certainly don't have. And I also think that our cross-project dependencies has a lot more features as well. So let me come back in to the slide page there, see if there's any more questions.
Yeah, we've got a couple more, or more than a couple now. So from Yvette, does the Portfolio Gantt have the ability to also show the potential pipeline of projects currently waiting to start?
Yes, you would be able to schedule projects in there. You could be able to clone the grid. It would appear in the Gantt, in the folder Gantt where it's there, and if it's waiting to schedule to start, you could then, if you don't want to see the ones that are scheduled to start, you want to kind of not see them in the view, you could use the labeling filter to take those out or archive it until it's ready to start. And then it will, as soon as you unarchive it, it would come back in. There's kind of a number of ways you could achieve that. Really, you could do a labeling system, or you could use the archiving. You could archive one until it's ready, or indeed have them across different folders if you wanted to. Ready to start. We're quite flexible on how you structure this. You've got the folders to structure them, then you've got the labels to structure them, and then you can make use of archiving as well to keep them out of the Gantt and just filter them out of the Gantt. But it would certainly, they would all show. Any grid that's in a folder will be in there, ready to go.
Excellent. Next question is from Edald, and it is, how is access controlled on account Gantt? Who can access it and or modify it per folder? Sorry.
Okay, yeah, good question. So at the grid level, anyone with view access can view a Gantt at the grid level, because you can view the grid, so you can open it up and view it. Anyone with edit access can edit the schedule as well. If you come up to the folder level, it follows the same logic. So if I've got view edit access to those grids, I can work with those grids. So if I was to open a folder and there were 4 grids in there, and I had view access to 2 of them, edit access to 1 of them, and no access to 1 of them, I would see 3 grids. I'd be able to view 2 of them and edit 1 of them. So it's picking up the access control from the grid. And if you do set the access control on the folder, that will trickle down into the grids anyway. What will happen then, if I was to then create a dependency to that, if someone else with edit access to 1 of those grids was then to create a dependency to the grid that I can't currently see, it would then bring it into those grids so that I can see it. I'd be able to see the items, but I wouldn't be able to open them and go and look at them. But in order to have a proper view of what's going on, I need to be able to see that, at least the items in that grid, to understand that there's a relationship between those two. Even though technically I don't have access to it, it will bring it in so that the Gantt essentially works. A Gantt with items that are affecting its dependencies will simply not work. They have to be in there in order for it to link up and work. So it can be fairly, I mean, that sounds complex, but essentially you're setting view and edit on the grids, and that's coming up into the portfolio. So if someone doesn't have access to a grid, they can't see it in the portfolio. Is probably the simple answer to that.
Great. Rab, I don't know if there's so much a question, but just building on one of the previous responses, he says, I use it as a complementary capability to Project and Primavera. MethodGrid is a fabulous whiteboard to pull out key dependencies, resource constraints, and assurance gaps. What do you think of that, Jody?
I think that sounds good. Yeah, we have lots of really, really interesting uses for MethodGrid. You know, beyond the traditional project kind of playbook, there's all sorts of uses of MethodGrid, including the whiteboard, the Kanban usage, employee onboarding, whatever you can grid, you can put into MethodGrid.
Excellent. We'll just give it another minute if there's any more questions before moving on to the next stage.
So I'll move on to the kind of the review of the year. There's been some more features in there, some from right at the beginning, which we might have forgotten. So I'm going to do a sort of roundup of the key features that we've delivered over the course of 2024. I'll go through a timeline fairly briefly, trying to explain roughly each one is, but then I'll drop back into MethodGrid again and show you some of the most sort of interesting key features that we've done this year, give you a quick look-see of what those look like in case anyone's missed any of those. So way back in January, Q1, we updated the Gantt so that you could export that data in the table to CSV and Excel. We expanded the search, so it started to search for items in your stage gates as well. So that's documents, content, tasks, everything in gates. We added an extra filter to the task log, so you can filter tasks by the stage that they were in. We then did a bunch of UI improvements to move around where action buttons and view buttons lived. And we also gave you the ability to toggle an element to full screen. Back in March, we migrated our AI assistant, which was using OpenAI, to use Microsoft's Azure service in the UK, so that all our AI data is kept in the UK now and never leaves, with all the enterprise privacy levels that entails. End of March, end of that quarter, we added a new embeds content area, which I'll show you in a minute. So you can now, any application that allows itself to be embedded, and when we talk about embed, probably the easiest example is when you're looking at a YouTube video and you have the share, it'll have an option to embed it, and it'll give you a bit of code, and you can put that somewhere, and that video will then appear on your website or in your app. So this embeds area means that anything that you've got in your tech infrastructure that can be embedded, you can now embed inside MethodGrid. So people don't need to leave MethodGrid in order to interact with other systems. Into Q2, we worked with Network Rail, where we have the PACE framework in a public grid. We brought that up to the government's 2.2 AA rating for accessibility for web applications. Some of these features now we're actually working towards the creation of the Portfolio Gantt. So one of those was changing the way that localization is done in the app and giving you some new settings in your account settings to set time zones. Following on from the accessibility in the PACE and in our public grids, we put in searching in there, which I'll show you in a minute. We then did some building features in elements and stage gates. We have areas that you can put into content, such as tasks areas, documents areas. When you delete items in there now, if that was an error, we've given you the option to undo and restore the item that you deleted. We then went back to the Gantt. We put in work calendars. So this enables you to define durations are set in days in the Gantt. This enables you to define per item in the Gantt the working days. So you can set Monday to Friday or Monday through to Sunday, whichever you want as your working calendars. And then into Q3, we brought the filtering that I showed you into the Gantt. We also added the element labels and the assignees in there, so you can filter by those. We added in some session controls. So this is security settings similar to what you would have on a banking app, where if I open a banking app and then I leave my phone somewhere, it will automatically log me out after a period of inactivity. We added that feature to MethodGrid. That is not a setting in your account, but if that is something that's interest to you, we can turn that on. Just contact the support team and we can put that on for you. And it can be set to whatever you want, 30 seconds, 20 minutes. And what that will do is if someone stopped interacting with MethodGrid, it will automatically log them out. We made a bit of a change to the way our Microsoft Teams integration works, largely driven by Microsoft changing their API a little bit. But it's enabled the webhook integrations now to go into the workflows in Teams. So in many ways, it's given you more features to that integration because you can now set up quite complex workflows in Teams and tell it what to do when it receives a notification from the webhooks in MethodGrid. Probably hard to demo now, but there's a help article on our knowledge base if you want to go and have a look at that. We brought in the ability to undo a task deletion. So if you deleted a task, you can now bring it back immediately. We added a bunch of new data endpoints to the API. So this is the data from your dashboards for grids, elements, gates, and tasks. You can now fetch that on an API and bring it into things like Power BI and build your own reporting around that. And then where we are now, at the beginning of Q4, we did some refactoring of the grid, which is leading to a larger piece of refactoring we're doing around speed and new features into the grid. Then we released the Portfolio Gantt, which we've just seen. And literally today, we've upgraded the AI assistance model. So it was using 3.5 and it's now on GPT-4 for when it's creating content. We've got 2 items that are waiting to be tested and released, which they will be released by the end of the year. The way the element filtering grid works, when you filter by themes, will now hide the themes rather than leaving them there with empty with no elements in. You can now hide them instead, which can, if you're filtering very deep grids, means that you could filter that down and have a much less depth on your grid, make them easier to read if people don't need to see those themes. And then we'll bring in the ability to undo the deletion of an entire content area. So that is a lot of words, but what does that actually look like? Let me ping back to MethodGrid. And hopefully I'm in there now. Let's go to a full screen. Okay, let me go to a different tab. So bring some of those to life. I won't do all of them. Some of them are quite visual and interesting to look at. Some of them are sort of refactoring under the hood. But if we look at some of the Gantt features that were added, because we're on a Gantt call here, but in my account settings now, I can set a bunch of localization settings. So I can set a time zone, which will affect when the end dates and things like that are set. I can set a date format, and your users can also override those settings to their own locale and preferred format if they want. You can set the start of the week, that affects when you're using a calendar picker and things like that, what day will be at the beginning of that user interface. And this is the account start date that we talked about right at the beginning for the Portfolio Gantt. It's kind of fallback scheduling date you can set in here. And I also mentioned the work calendars. This is where you can create work calendars. So in this particular account, but you can have any number. You could have 3 days, 2 days, whatever you want. We default to a 7-day calendar. So by default, your Gantt would work across those. And in here, I've also made a 5-day one, and you can set that as your default so that when it schedules in the Gantt, it only schedules on the work days, Monday to Friday. If I go back to a project, let's go into project A. So the Gantt, and this is the same at this grid level. It's also the same at the portfolio level. I can export the data I'm currently viewing into CSV, Excel, and a PDF if I wanted to print and share that as a progress report. The filtering has become quite powerful. So if I wanted in here, if I wanted to see, well, I want to see all the things that are assigned to Beryl, that's now brought those in. I can see that the project is assigned to Beryl, this work package is assigned to Beryl, and I can build these filters up. So I can also set, perhaps I want to see all the high risk that is assigned to Beryl, and now I'm looking at that for that Gantt, and the chart will filter to match as well. So you can filter on all of these. So you can filter by duration, the title, the dates, constraints, deadlines. And here are those work calendars. So you can see that this work package is scheduling on that 5 days. I can, if I want, change individual items to schedule by a different one. So I can change that. And that item would then use the 7-day calendar instead of the 5-day calendar. You can also set this as a grid default in the grid info. And in here, I can say, okay, for this particular grid, I want it to use the 5-day calendar, or I want it to use the 7-day calendar. So I can set a project level calendar. That's what it will use by default for items. And then in the Gantt itself, I can then choose, mix and match, have different working days for different items. So some good stuff in the Gantt over the year. In terms of search, I mentioned that we introduced the stage gate searching. So search is over here on the left. If I open it up in a grid, it will always filter itself down to say, I'm only going to search in this project for you. So in here, if I was to search for gate, I will start to see there's actual stage gates. I can see content in the gates. These are tasks from the gates. I can see files from the gates, and these will open up the gates there for you to see. So if you've got a very long, a huge amount of stages, you can search across all the content in your grid. We did the same thing, bringing the search into the PACE framework here. So for those that don't know, this is a project we ran with Network Rail to bring their PACE framework into MethodGrid. And this gives all their contractors and externals access to the PACE way of working across the stages with gates. And this is all interactive and viewable. And this year we also added the ability to search. So if people are looking for a specific area of PACE, I could search for risk management, for instance, and it will go ahead and look through all the elements that are to do with risk management. It searches the content for mentions of risk management. These are any tasks with a mention of risk management, and any files. And when I find what I'm looking for, perhaps I was looking for the plan template, I can hit that and it will open it up and take me to it, and I can click and download that. And you'll see it's a very rich playbook for PACE with everything you would possibly ever need to know about that framework. We also made some changes to the UI. So when we brought in Gantt, we wanted to separate things that you can do in the grid. So these would be actions. For instance, I can set access control on this grid, separate it from the views of the grid. So a view of the grid, we have the information about the grid. We have the task log, which will list every single task in the grid, and I can interact in there. I can access these up here as well. I can see an activity log, which is everything anyone is doing in this grid. And of course, I can go to the Gantt. And this user interface now flows across the platform. So when I go to a folder, I have the same user interface. And when I go into the grid, I get the same UI. And if I was to go into a element, I get the same UI. And we also introduce the ability to full screen an element when you're working on it, if you're on a particularly big screen. Also in elements and also in terms of content and knowledge, we added the embeds area that I talked about. So in this element, I've added an embed area. So this is actually an embed of an e-learning platform. So in here now, I've got my tasks, purpose, content, templates. There's also now embedded an e-learning course. And this could be anything. I could embed a Microsoft form, for instance. And in this embeds area, we have a number of tools. I can full screen it. So I can just work through this course and come back down to there, or I can share this and someone can go straight to this element and open up that course. So this is a hugely powerful feature. If I go into edit mode, you'll see there, it's simply the embed code goes in here. I can give it a title, a description, link out to the source if I want, and save it. And that embed would then appear there, as that one does. And shrink out of there. Just to show you the undoing as well. So if you're editing, if you're in a build mode here and you're editing, and say, for instance, you were to delete an element link or any kind of link. So whenever you delete across here, any items in here, if I delete that now, it will give me the opportunity to undo that and bring it back. And it will do the same in tasks and files. And later this quarter, we'll bring it in for deleting content areas as well. So that's a lot of stuff in the elements. So the Teams integration I mentioned. So what the Teams integration does is, if I click here, we've got a number of chat integrations, Slack, Google, and Teams. So in Teams, if you go to a team or a chat with a number of people in it, when you're in Teams, there's an option to set up a workflow. And when you set up a workflow, you can set one up that works with what's called a webhook. So when you configure your workflow in Teams, it will then give you a webhook URL, which you can paste in here. And then MetaGrid, this grid, will start to send these notifications into that chat. So you can have it send a notification when a new element is added or when comments are added. So you can link your project to Teams and have notifications appear in Teams when key activity happens in your grid. If you want to set that up, I just do a quick search in our knowledge base for Teams, and you'll find an article on how to do that. But once you're in the workflows, they're advanced in Teams, but you can get some pretty basic ones out of the box, and they're ready to go for you. And then the last but not least, we released this today, is GPT-4. So in case anyone has never seen our AI assistant building content before, if I was to create a new element here, and I give it a title, for instance, Project Risk Management, I've got a blank slate here. I would ordinarily have to start writing out our methodology for doing a risk management, in a project. If I use our AI assisted template, I can pick out one of the templates that I've pre-created with all the prompts needed to create this bit of knowledge in an element based on this title. And if I select a deliverable, this is a template that you can build out. And then in each area of the template, the AI will use that. So if if it finds there's a tasks area in there, it can create tasks for you. If it's a web links area in there, it will create links for you. And all areas that have descriptions and the ability to add text, it will create all that text. And it does that by using the prompts that you put in the template itself. So it's been through there, and now it's made me a ready to go starter for a project risk management work package with key objectives of this, some suggested tasks, format, quality. You can see it's done a lot, and I can now change that, add to it, do what I like to make it into mine, but it's given me a huge start and the ability to build playbooks incredibly quickly. That is a very quick run through of some of the key features we have released this year. Let me come back here, Tom, and open that up also to any questions they might have prompted.
Sure. So, if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat or the question section. We have one comment and one question to kick us off. So Sam says, these recaps on past and future are worth their weight. Music to my ears, which is great to hear. So thanks for that one, Sam. Question from Rab. Is there a grid/sheet that gives all the features in an easily digestible format? For instance, I have an Excel control shortcuts sheet for Excel and one for Power BI.
Do you mean like keyboard shortcuts or sort of shortcuts to what we've released?
I think it's a grid/sheet, so maybe is it maybe a list of them? Certainly something we should.
So if you just want a list of everything that's come out this year, so everything we release that's a major feature, we will write quite in-depth release notes for that. And if you go to the website method-grid.com, if you go right to the bottom in the kind of footer links, you'll find a link to the product roadmap. And in there, it breaks down at the top committed features that are coming soon. And then by each quarter, what we released each quarter. And from each title, you'll be able to go and see the release notes for those, which go into great depth about that feature, what it means for you as a Method Grid user.
I've just shared that in the chat for everybody, if everybody would like to have a look at that.
Excellent.
Okay, we'll just give it a minute if there's any more questions.
Yes, if there's any more questions. I mean, if anyone would like, to go over one-to-one in their own account in terms of Portfolio Gantt, then please just get in touch with us. You can go to the contact page on our website. Just fill in the form for support, and we can set up a call with the customer success team. We'll be happy to go through it with you, because everyone's account is structured as they want it structured, right? So we can help you with that and show you the best ways to get the most out of it.
Yeah, and we'll be uploading this onto our YouTube channel, so it's an on-demand resource if you would like to rewatch it or anything like that. Okay, I think that might be us.
Okay.
So, firstly, just to thank everybody for all their different questions and comments during the webinar today, and to thank Jody for taking us through that. It's really great to see all the different product advancements over the course of the year. Just with our final slide here, like a specific focus on our Process to Playbook series that was hosted earlier in the year by our new CEO, Pip. It's an excellent series that you can find on our YouTube channel. So I think I shared the link earlier in the chat there, if you want to find that. But if you go to our YouTube channel, there are now coming up to about 2 years worth of on-demand grid talks, so many different presentations and different things looking into what we've been working on. Today, we shared 2 presentations from the Project Controls Expo with Pip and Dom, both speaking about digital pace and Project Leap. So that can be found there. And we'll also, on a different subject, we'll announce in the new year what our next Grid Talk is going to be. So give us a follow on LinkedIn and kind of keep track with that and keep track with what's coming up. But otherwise, I'll leave it there and just say thank you everybody for attending, and we'll see you in the new year. I hope you have a great kind of holiday period. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.